Yes, a stopwatch. So okay, so here we go. First Union of the One on YouTube, I think, live streaming. We're gonna see how long this lasts. But so for people who are tuning in on YouTube, you probably aren't a regular listener, but well, I'll fill you in anyways. So go to the Union of the Unwanted.com. You can find links to our YouTube channel, Rumble channel, all that stuff. Charlie and I are taking the driver's seat in regards to this show. It's if you're new to the show, it's a roundtable discussion show with different thinkers, researchers, journalists, authors, all types of people in the alternative media community to come on and chat, and we share our thoughts, perspectives, philosophies, and sometimes our research. And you can find the show every other. We're going to try to do it every other week like we used to do. We're going to try to hold on to that every other Monday, but make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter and all the spots that we're at. So, and then you can stay updated on what our schedule is. And at the moment, like I said, we'll be live streaming on YouTube. And then also in the near future, we'll be live streaming on Rumble. Also, that'll be probably our primary spot because it's the probably safest place to upload, alternative media without worrying about being censored or whatnot. But any Charlie, you want to jump in? You have anything you want to add to the intro?
Oh, and we're going to be doing reunion shows every Monday that we're not live. We're going to be putting those out for everybody. They're just going to be replays of some of the previous episodes. We figured that those conversations were worth hearing again. Of course, they're always available. If you're subscribed to the show, you can just scroll back and find them. But sometimes it's a little easier if you just shuffle it up for people and present it to them weekly. So on the weeks that we're not live, we'll be reunion. So check it out.
Awesome. Well, I know this is going to be probably a great start to a show by saying, does anybody want to talk about what they thought about our boy, Sam Tripoli, being on Joe Rogan the day before Trump? And Sam Tripoli's little screenshot of the comments was hilarious. JR, he doesn't always give you what you want, but he gives you what you need. And then he had a screenshot of all the pissed off comments who were like, hey, I expected Trump. Who the hell is this guy?
He's having a hell of a week, and today's his birthday. So happy birthday to Sam Tripoli, who crowned a week of the Dodgers going to the World Series, a walk-off grand slam in Game 1, his Rogan episode going out the same day, Trump's episode going out the same, describing himself as podcast Eskimo brothers with Donald Trump is fucking hilarious. Let's not kid ourselves. And doing Kill Tony as well. I mean, it's a hell of a week. And not to forget the retards over at Bohemian Grove in Florida, where he did that event as well, which looked like a lot of fun. And I say retards with all due love and affection. I like those guys. They're actually fantastic.
You already ruined it for me, Charlie. You already ruined it. I think I start the timer again. There you go.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So
That's so funny.
Who did all you guys listen to the Trump episode and the Sam Tripoli episode? One, the other?
I listened to the whole Trump one. I was driving back from New York, actually, and I had 19 hours on my hands. So I listened to all three, and it was interesting because the next day, UFC was on early, and he actually did a roundtable with Eddie Bravo, Brian Callen, and Brendan Schwab. And I think if you just listen to the 15-minute cut of what Bravo and him have to say, it pretty much encapsulates the whole thing. Like, basically, Donald Trump weaves it. You know, he knows what the question is. He could answer it. He's not interested in answering the question. Like, I was talking to my buddy, and he was like, when RFK Jr. speaks, you can have a conversation with him. And to a varying degree, very much so, because he gets much more of a straight-up answer. He doesn't evade as much. But, like, right off the bat, when Rogan asked him about his first day in office, he got into a long tirade about Lincoln and some memorial to his dead son that probably took up 15 minutes, right? So
it's the weave.
It's the weave. But at the same time, he was able to ask him about JFK. I would have liked to hear 9/11. Guys, I got to tell you, I'm on the heels just a couple of hours ago. Just so everybody knows, I never know who I'm interviewing the next day. Supposedly, I got Giuliani tomorrow. I don't know how that's going to run, other than the fact that, I got to ask about certain aspects of 9/11. I don't know if he's going to walk off or what's going to happen, but let's roll, baby. Like, we're so many days out on the election. Quite frankly, I'm somewhat sympathetic to what happened to Giuliani via the Hunter Biden laptop in the Trump administration. But that doesn't mean you're not paying your dues on your city corporation council getting blown up in Building 7. And, I guess he's coming on for a book he just wrote about the Biden crime family. Great. How far back we going? I mean, Biden met with one of the money men behind 9/11. Another fact that I don't know how I don't bring up in this conversation. It's a weird world, man. Like, had you told me 20 years ago that I'd be interviewing Rudy Giuliani, probably wouldn't believe it. Probably wouldn't believe I speak on a tour where that guy also speaks, or that I would have ever gone to an evangelical Trump rally in North Carolina this past week. Actually, a week ago to this day. It's bizarro train. I don't know what to say about it. Like, I'm wondering what happens on election day. I'm wondering, no matter what that outcome is, where we go on January 6th, January 20th, when they swear this guy in. If they swear this guy in. And then, if we even get that far without some kind of weird World War III or Black Swan event, and I'm hoping and praying we do, but if we do, then the party just starts. So I'd say this, though, the one thing that's going to be tough is for all of us to monetize that, because the shadow ban is very real for anybody that's talking pragmatic about the whole thing, right? Because on one end, what's my choice? Total outward, I admit I'm a puppet and that the dude in front of me has dementia and nobody seems to be saying anything about it. Or Elon Musk and Team Humanity and a supposed autistic billionaire jumping up in a scoot hat with a dark MAGA thing. I guess I have to go with that. I'm not happy about it.
He was doing his best Tim Walz, Jay. Come on. Come on. He was matching energy. You know it. I know it. We all know it.
Listen, obviously the choice on paper is quite clear, but how far this thing has already gone off the rails is also quite clear to me. So I don't know what everybody's perspective is and what they're looking forward to, but it's going to be a fun show the next couple of months at least, right?
May I respond to that?
Sure.
Jason, that's awesome that you're interviewing him. Tell people where that is. I definitely.
Well, let's hold on. Let's just hope it happens. I have people not show up all the time, or like Alan Dershowitz, I got half a sentence out and he walked off. Kash Patel walked off my show as soon as I started bringing up signature reduction. So, look, man, this is, when I catch people at these Reawaken America tours, and I did a transgender to transhuman, scared the ever-loving, I won't curse, don't worry, Pasta, out of a lot of Christians. I got confronted by a mother-daughter combo later on for an hour and a half in somebody's hotel. That's how serious it was. I tell people this. There are no heroes. And first of all, I say be your own hero, but let's admit it. We all suck. There are only villains of varying degrees. So, I wish it was, and I love humanity. I'm actually Team Humanity. My whole message is stay human. But come on, man. The other thing about Giuliani, which I should bring up, but I can't imagine me bringing up, I'm going to at least let him ride this one out, is that you got John Kiriakou saying they were selling pardons for $2 million after the fact. And it's not just him. Giuliani's girlfriend that's suing him also brought up the same thing and said $1 million went to the Trump camp and $1 million went to Giuliani. Do I believe that? Yeah. John Kiriakou has no reason to lie at all. He already served his prison time. So that's how the world actually works. What do you think? Kodak Black is so cool and Trump liked his music? No, he had 2 million beans. Let's get on the reality train of where this world is. But at the same time, I'm also not an invalid, and I understand that I encompass a circle where at least I can put a viewpoint out there that starts a conversation that may reach somebody in the administration or may reach a talking point that maybe you can move the needle a little bit. Because what else do we have? And this is a serious question right now. What else do we have that's reality based in this point, because I'm open, but I have not heard a reality based point. Like, I get it. I get why people don't like Trump. I get like why people don't like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I get all that. But when you look at where we're at, you know, I don't want World War III. I want this Russia-Ukraine stuff to stop. And I also want the Middle East. I'm sick of seeing dead kids and babies in my feed. Now, I'm not saying there's any kind of perfect answer in the Middle East. In fact, I'm going to say there's only realistically very bad answers. Let one of those very bad answers stop me seeing literally 24 dead kids a week in my feed. So I'm going to open the floor. I got my little opening rant. Anybody that would like to respond, please do.
I just want to share my Rudy Giuliani story. So being at the deadly insurrection and ended up filming this gentleman, Jason Fuentes, and seeing the whole live action role play right outside where the pink woman was bashing. So I end up in Rudy Giuliani's hotel room the next day.
Whoa, man.
Yeah. He calls me because I want that footage. And it just so happened I was looking for Zach, and it was very effing cold. And I wanted to get close to the action, but I was scanning for someone to protect me. And as I was energetically scanning these men, I was like, what the F are these people? They don't look like patriots. They look like they got hired. And then the next day when I walked into the Willard hotel room, Tori and Millie Weaver were there. And the first thing that came to my mind is this going to just end up a documentary? And I thought that I was uploading footage to help with the investigation, only to have Rudy show my segment, my footage that day on his show, which ended up getting canceled on YouTube, and then showing it again the next year. No credit, no, nothing. So I thought to sue Rudy, but because I hadn't trademarked the footage, I could not do that. But just that's my little Rudy. So go get him, Tiger.
Anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, does anybody want to respond to like a viable option to other than what I basically just said? It's like, and there's a lot of hopium in there, by the way. It's not like I think we have free and fair elections. And again, it's not like I think that we're going to get the best Trump administration ever. J.D. Vance is slick. You know, I just watched him, forget about just Trump doing Rogan, which I predicted he was going to do 2 months ago when you started seeing him go on the podcast train. And honestly, I even discussed how what he should have done is challenge Kamala Harris to a debate at Madison Square Garden and pick the moderator. And she got to pick a moderator. And of course, pick Rogan. And then who cares who she has? But of course, he ends up having the rally there. So I think there's a lot of things going on that are pretty in your face. But J.D. Vance just did Tim Dillon's show. Came off pretty likable, right? I'm not an idiot. I know it's all Thiel money. I watched Thiel on Joe Rogan sit there and talk about Epstein for an hour, and then Rogan bring up Whitney Webb like she hasn't done a dozen pieces on Thiel. Like, you know, is that a blind spot? Is that a little kick to the curb? You want to make a comment, Peter? I don't know. I don't have the inside baseball. I know I've had 24 conversations with Whitney Webb about Peter Thiel myself. So, like, you know, I'm sure a lot of you have as well. So again, I'm going to pose this to everybody. Is there another viable option than getting behind this Trump train and hoping at least some of these reforms happen? Like, do you think it's going to be that much the same as the Kamala Harris administration? Because look, man, I was just back home over at Oneana. I literally left as the catch and release came. I left during the COVID 1984 nightmare. Place is a mess. Place is a mess. There's homeless people I watched somebody OD getting pulled out on a trailer as my buddy who works in the hospital says it happens at least every 2 days, sometimes 2 to 3 times a day. And you know what they're making their money on? You better believe it. The transgender surgeries. This is an upstate New York college town next to Cooperstown. All right? Nothing but demolished buildings and construction going on. They said they were going to infuse all this money a decade ago in this program where they're going to build buildings for artisans. No, they built Section 8 for heroin addicts. It's so bad that it was the first place they put Narcan machines over at the Lord's table down the road. And now they're at the point, they did that 3 years ago. They're not just training the high school teachers, but the high school students how to administer Narcan. That's where we're at. So I'm gonna pose the damn question again. Do we have a viable option other than like trusting somebody who's provably in certain instances, COVID-1984, been extremely weak?
I just would like to understand why, if you can explain to me why Trump would be a better option to remedy that.
I don't know that he remedies anything, but I know the other person is just this. I mean, you can't even get that person to lie and say that they would change one policy that they put in place under the Biden administration. You saw that on The View. Would you have done anything differently? Nope. Well, okay. At least there's the rhetoric of something different. And look, I don't think the guy's coming in as super, like, there is a lot of delusion out there. I'm the first one to admit it. Like, I don't think people are going to jail. I don't necessarily know that there's a bunch of reform. But I'll tell you what, like somebody like Flynn, who I question all the time, is extremely pragmatic, I think, when he says, this buys us 4 years best. So we better get our S together. He's like, he's not gonna swoop in like Superman and do all this other stuff. But I do believe that there's a chance we don't go to World War III. Like, all right, let me tell you one of the better things Trump said on that Joe Rogan interview people might not be aware of. Talked about John Bolton and what a horrible, crazy-ass person he was and what a terrible pick he was for the administration. But he said when he walked in to a room with Bolton to negotiate, Bolton was such a crazy mother effer. Everyone knew he would bomb the shit out. Sorry, pasta. Would bomb the S out of them. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself, bro. And that would give him an edge at the negotiation table with people like North Korea and Iran, etc. And I thought that was actually at least a very eye-opening, honest perspective from, the ex-president of the United States. So, I mean, I don't even know if there's an answer because I haven't come up one with listen, I got a dummy head. We all know it. I'm like a bartender pizza guy at heart. I'd rather be called, I called MMA fights like 2 weeks ago. Mwah, I'm in heaven. It's my Christmas, right? That's what I'd rather be doing. But again, I just don't see another viable option. So I'm going to throw that out there because listen, guys, I do believe they've tried to kill him twice, right? I think he really did get shot through the ear.
I don't think that there's any question there, but like for all of us, obviously we're going to be, and rightfully so, skeptical. I would hope so, skeptical of everyone and everything. And we're not giving Trump, I don't think many of us are giving Trump a pass on the mistakes made. But one thing that was refreshing to hear him say on the Rogan podcast, which I hadn't really heard him say just so blatant before, was that underlying humility that he like never has to say that he made some stupid decisions. And I'm encouraged that RFK Jr. is now, because I interviewed RFK Jr. before he joined with Donald Trump, and he was very negative and very upset and bitter about the fact that Trump had promised him a position before and then basically reneged. And so to hear from RFK Jr. like that he was encouraged and that they already have a transition team going, which is like never had been done before, a few months before Trump would potentially take office, is encouraging that he's trying to address one of the biggest mistakes that he made, which is, I think, falling victim to flattery, because we know Trump is guilty of that, and letting people kiss his butt and allowing that to influence his decisions and who he would trust. I will say though, the fact that he said something along the lines of Mike Pompeo is a good guy in that, and I'm like, wait a minute, please keep up with your learning from your past mistakes, because I definitely, with the whole Assange thing and everything, am not a fan of Pompeo. But it's encouraging, but I think it's smart for us all to remain skeptical. I am 100% committed to holding, if Trump gets in office, I will ramp up my critiques of him and be more critical of Trump if he gets in power, because I committed to holding those in power accountable as a journalist. And that's why I left mainstream news, is because they don't do that anymore. They're a PR machine for the Democrat Party. So to uphold my commitment to holding those in power accountable, if he's the one that gets in power, well, be prepared for me to be more critical. But yeah, at this point, we need the encouragement, at least sliver of hope, that we can pivot away from the destruction under a Biden-Harris regime, which Jason, you already said she would be a continuance of, and I think even more destructive, if that's even possible.
I think that the Trump administration, if he gets in, is going to be the first Bilderberg administration. You have to look at it. In 2019, Pompeo and Kushner both went to the Bilderberg meeting. J.D. Vance is a member who's gone to multiple meetings, and Peter Thiel is on the steering committee. Ultimately, and this is my pessimistic side coming out, I think we're screwed either way. That's just my little take on Trump and what I see. Now, domestic policies and the rhetoric, sure, I like Trump's rhetoric much better than Kamala's. I think the left-wing Democratic Party is now so far gone, it doesn't even make sense. But with that being said, the one thing that brings me back to a lot of skepticism about Trump, which is why I call him Orange Jesus, I think he's a false prophet, is his connection with Bilderberg. And if he gets in, look at who's surrounding him. They've already tried to take him out 2 or 3 times, right? Let's go thought experiment. What if they are successful while he's in office?
So let me respond to that, because I don't think you're wrong. All right, let's start there. For those that don't know, I got back into the game after quite a long hiatus, after, InfoWars and then putting Shade the Motion Picture, going to Bilderberg 2017. And at the time, Jack Posobiec was shouting me down with a microphone, chanting CNN is ISIS. Like, ridiculously, I end up debating him. It's where I end up reconnecting with Luke and working for We Are Change for a while. And one of the things that, I said is, first of all, InfoWars wasn't there. And it wasn't until Luke basically put out a video, hey, why aren't you here? That on Sunday morning I saw David Knight and actually a young Harrison Smith on the camera showing up as pretty much everybody was leaving. So I just quickly said, whatever. But one of my big criticisms was there were 5 members of the administration in there. And had it been flipped of Obama just the year before, it'd be the year of Bilderberg for Obama, no doubt. Okay? But you also have to look at the organization like this. You're very right to point out that Thiel is a steering member. Now I'm thinking for a decade and a half, almost 20 years. But he has an opposite. He does have Eric Schmidt. Now, at the end of the day, they work a lot together in AI, the military. And if you don't think the AI that Google produces with NASA is incorporated into the Palantir product, I think that we're talking like cuckoo land. Of course it is. So in that respect, I think they do work together. But at the same time, just the social push, maybe it's a little bit different. It's hard for me to tell, right? Because you're right. You point out that Pompeo and Kushner were there that year. In fact, you go to C-SPAN and you can watch Pompeo get escorted to the Builder boat where they're going to the Builder castle, where apparently he's going to give some foreign policy speech on Iran. But I would think that even there, it's not total uniform agreement. I think there's a lot of backdoor arms deals. I think, at the same time, there is an overarching goal of course, one world government, centralized control, etc. And I don't like it, by the way. I think it should be abolished. I think the Logan Act should be in play. We should be having transparency. We got to remember, the last time there was a big scandal, it was Prince Bernhard, because we have royalty in 1979 and 2024, by the way, of the Netherlands running arms. But, here's the other thing about all that. Everybody's talking about an Epstein list. You're going to get there's no list, everybody. Newsflash. I'm going to say it again. Hey, dummies, There's no list. There is video and photographic blackmail evidence on people and a bunch of arms deals they're not telling you about. I'm going to say it again for the 100th time. Epstein was an arms dealer. Prince Andrew was the arms dealer openly for the United Kingdom. All right? That was his main gig. So he wasn't pimping kids out. He was using them as blackmail, and then he was a pedophile himself, And then he was pawning off a bunch of the girls that he had turned out to other people of promise. We already know the names of a bunch of his co-conspirators. Sarah Palin, Leslie Groff, Nadia Marcinkova. I mean, come on. Lists. Like that's your Christmas list. Go ahead, Charlie. I see you itching.
Yeah, well, so far we've actually kind of made the assumption that Trump's going to win. But
I know. I know.
He is gonna win.
No,
Let's take some bets.
No, listen, I have no energy. I mean, I'm not. I'm just. Let me just propose something.
Yeah.
Because if the goal is to truly demoralize the American people, like the good American people, not the screwed up SSRIs, fried coastal retards, but like the heart of America. And you wake up the day after the election and low energy, I wouldn't change anything. I'm not going to go on Joe Rogan. Kamala Harris gets 82 million votes and wins. What does that do to the psychology? What does that do to the general public? When it is so obviously thrown in your face, like, no, she won. And if you question it, you're a conspiracy theorist. One of those election deniers, probably a Nazi. You're right next to Adolf Hitler.
You're spot on, Charlie, because they've been so brazen about everything else. They don't give a rat's dude. I'm doing.
But I think there's
suspicious a tiny bit that you're like, why aren't you guys more panicked? If I were in your spot, I'd be freaking the fuck out. And yet they're not. And Kamala's sort of like, maybe I'll show up. Well,
she's taking a couple days off. So you're right. You're
maybe
spot
she
on.
knows something we don't know.
Well, I mean, come on. Wait, Charlie. Again, they obviously put in a dementia patient and told us all he wasn't a dementia patient over and over again.
That's what I mean, brazen.
When he was clearly that's why. Listen, I'm not ruling you out. I said there's a lot of hopium in what I said. We got a long ways to go, brother.
They made her.
What's that?
That's what they would really be trying for. I think thought they would get one before. I don't know, maybe, but you can throw that out there.
Wouldn't you have chaos?
Zero will in the nation for a civil war. Zero. It's not gonna happen.
I'm glad.
The other angle of this is that the whole Biden Kamala thing is supposed to bring Trump in. That's the purpose of it.
Well, how about this, that we all decide that it really doesn't matter what's going on in Washington, D.C., that we have a swamp in all of our backyards already, and that we can do a lot more ourselves.
100%.
Because frankly, I think the left, right, Republican, Democrat is totally dead and gone, and let D.C. clean up itself. I want to clean up my community, my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure that I get the globalists and their 17 goals out of my state. Where I can actually get involved, and a lot of things we can do, we can push for. That's why I wrote Americans Anonymous. I feel like our country has hit rock bottom. We need an intervention. Our country also is as sick as its secrets. I think we do need a Truth and Reconciliation commission of some sort by the people for the people, and I think. I don't need to see any more committee hearings by these lunatics in D.C. I want to have them in my backyard with the people that are getting no bid contracts with my school board, or the people that are, selling my land after a disaster, saying it can't be used to, companies that just want the natural resources. I mean, the country has been infiltrated a long time ago, and there's areas where all of us can do things faster probably than any politician, just by getting together and saying, you know what, I'm not going to wait for the government anymore. I'm going to make this country better myself, and looking at what we have on our plate, what we can use. But honestly, I don't think the answer is in DC or left or right or Republican, Democrat. Right now, I keep saying, when I ask people who they're voting for, I hope that they say themselves and their children and their family and their future, and to not have a war where all these other countries are all waiting with bated breath. I keep saying to people, they don't give a crap about America. They just want America out of the way. And that's really what I believe. I think our country has been captured by a parent company that runs it like it's their business. They're the stakeholders, and all of us are equally lucky they just let us live here. And I think if we can just identify where the people can actually take back power and work together, even if it's just 3% of Americans that want to get involved, I feel like if Trump wins in 2025, it's sand in the gears for 4 years to try to dismantle some of the globalist bullshit that's taken over the world.
Alex, you've been patiently listening, and you're a business owner, and I'm sure the economy and a lot of these other issues are, near and dear to your heart. Do you have some thoughts on some of the things we've discussed?
Well, thanks, Ricky. I wanted to share because I don't hear this being out there much, but it's in my circle because it's a guy I've known for a long time. I interviewed on the show multiple times, and his name is Andrew Paquette. And you can find him at Zark Files, Zarkfiles. So check this out. The guy's a genius. He's a PhD, and he's decoded on many of the states. He started out with New York. He's decoded the algorithm that they use to flip the elections. And his documentation, his evidence for this is overwhelming. And it's very mathematically oriented, but it's not that hard to get through. And now he's found not only are the New York voter rolls completely compromised, but also other states like Pennsylvania, Arizona, Ohio, Wisconsin, all have this kind of sleeper cell algorithmic ability to do what we always have suspected. So I really give so much credit to Andrea, and I hope people check out his work. He's been on some major shows right now, but a lot of times it's not kind of in our general circle because unfortunately he's kind of very Trumpish, but that's okay, because his evidence is just rock solid. So I wanted to throw that out there because I don't think it's gotten enough attention. The elections are rigged. There is somebody back there who can flip the switch. And for example, in New York, there are 9 million of these zombie clone records in the database. And final thought, the record base, the way he got this is in the public domain. So if you go county by county, you can do a FOIA request like he did, get all the records. And then if you're kind of a obsessive guy like him, you can compile it all and you have this evidence. So he's not saying anything that you can't prove yourself.
Well, then you have to take it from there and get like-minded people in your state that want to also fight it and get in their faces, because the left, right, Republican, Democrat are all being picked by the parent company, and they don't want anyone to look at to look in the books or look at the problems as long as they can get away with it. So you take that guy taking his evidence and getting together with a bunch of other New Yorkers that care, can make a big, much more big of a difference than anything we can do in DC. I think we can just do that in a few states and have, not it just be Trump people, because I know Pasta has been fighting for this. He's not a Trump guy, but he knows that the elections are fraudulent. So if we, the people, don't change them, why would the politicians change them? They like it that way.
Yeah, I think the elections are flipping back and forth as we speak. I mean, the Fifth Circuit Court ruled 2 days ago that all the ballots have to be in by election night, and now states are overriding that. And then you have like Arizona. Arizona, a month and a half ago said we got 500,000 plus on the voter rolls that aren't, what's the word I'm looking for? They're not eligible to vote. And this could affect, Katie Hobbs said in a recorded call that this could affect four election cycles back. Almost 20 years worth of elections. Now, Maricopa County claims that it's going to take just the county, Maricopa County, just the county is claiming that it's going to take up to 2 weeks to count their votes. Florida, on the other hand, 22 million people, they get theirs done in one day, except when there's a hurricane on its way, I seen, that could possibly be making landfall in Florida on Tuesday.
Another one?
Monday night.
Another one?
Yeah, it's
where
called
this time?
Holly. Is that
again on the East Coast or the West Coast?
It's
West Coast.
Same spot.
Wow, they didn't do enough damage. One
Can I
more.
interject in staying on the subject of the elections real quick?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this is information, Alex, that, and I've learned so much from this show and people on this show. Learn to open my eyes, follow the money, and understand that the truther movement, or whatever you want to call this, is all about finding the truth. And it's helped me to think a different way. But when we talk about elections, this is something I've been ingrained in doing for quite some time. And all the information that I got that you had talked about, Alex, is very similar to information we've known 20 years now. Like, this has been going on for quite some time. I've talked to people in this field that have looked at the software for the first time. It's something that he coined the phrase fraction magic, which is not even a bug within the system. It's actually a feature. So the mechanisms, the three companies, the private equity companies, which are just zombie companies of another zombie companies that actually count our ballots, 99% of them, especially in these big areas, those three companies, they all have this proprietary software. Like I said, it's a feature, not a bug. They use these for weighted elections for a lot of places like down in South Florida and Boca Raton, for condo associations where people own bigger apartments, so they get more of a vote since they own more square feet. So this has been going on for quite some time.
Fractal voting is what you're talking about?
What's that?
Where it's like fractal voting. So
yeah, it's called fraction magic. Yeah, so they can take fractions of one vote and give them to another one. It's a weighted mechanism.
It's
but the
like
whole thing is we're not allowed to.
They stole the money.
Yeah, we're not allowed to open up the hood. Yeah, we're not allowed to open up the hood and look at the engine. We just have to, be told what the count is. And I believe when this came into play around the 2019, 2020 time, where, when I saw a lot of people on January 6th at the Capitol, I was very happy, because to me, it was all about growing this election integrity movement, regardless of the fact that it used to be involved with a lot of, progressives. But now the populace was opening up their eyes to understand, and I'm going to say this confidently, that we might have never, ever had an honest, fair election where power was actually given by the people. Even the Kennedy-Nixon election had a lot of, things we see today. And there's many ways to skin a cat. So in other words, it's not just about counting the votes, it's about clustering and stuffing the ballots. In a way, I'm kind of happy that we see some of these drop boxes getting lit on fire out in the middle of nowhere, right? You know what I'm saying? Because this is a serious problem. And in the 7 Latin American countries I went to, you would never see a drop box out in the middle of nowhere. They don't have these things. And it allows the mechanism for the establishment, the oligarchs, because we have to remember in 2020, even though Joe Biden won the election, the coattail went to the Republicans. And I think I suspect a lot of people like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, they're okay with the way the election system is because it's working.
Can I ask you a question real quick, Costa?
I'm just going to wrap up really quickly and say this much. And yes, I would love to answer your question, Christy Lee. With all this going on and so much craziness and confusion, and everything you just talked about, Alex, the main message is that we don't have elections. We have selections. And the oligarch is going to give us who they want. And whoever they give us, we need to reject automatically, because it's all meant to be. And that's why I was so wishing that Sam Tripoli was here today to validate that tweet. He says that we're just witnessing Kabuki theater in front of our eyes, and it's just playing out in front of us as if we actually have choice. We don't.
Elections are to give consent to the murder machine.
Exactly.
You just stand in line to give your consent to the murder machine.
To that point, sorry, to what Jason was saying earlier, I mean, it's different layers of fake and gayness, and it's really about what we do, like Mel was saying, but also to go within, and this agenda to co-opt humanity and really dumb them down has been going for a really, really long time. And you have to just question your soul. Like, are you pouring out your soul like everybody else? Like, people are challenged in this design, whether they're going to stay true to themselves or whether they're going to compromise. I mean, we saw that for the past 4 years, everyone who thought this was safe and effective, and how many people have admitted that they're wrong. That's why I made that PSA, admit you're wrong. So, there's value in taking responsibility for your mistakes and learning from them. And at least for me, I mean, this has been layers of an onion when I started reporting at the beginning of the Rona, and then just seeing how fake and gay it really is. And by the way, I had someone say, I was doing a show and they were saying that I would lose a lot of people by using the word gay. And I'm like, I'm the writer. Let's look at the anthropology of gay. And I'm not going to just follow the herd and be PC. I'm going to stand there and educate. If I'm going to lose them at gay people should be upset that that word is being used. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. I really do think it starts with us and what we can do in our own abode and community.
Yeah.
Hey, Pasta, are we past our 24-minute mark for the swears?
I stopped the timer
Really
a long time ago. There's gonna have to be beep.
So, years ago,
retarded and all that stuff's gonna get me in trouble.
Can I just get this question in really quick? I'm totally willing to believe that there's been selections, and willing to believe that the process leading up to the elections is a lot of where the rigging happens. Just the very process is stupid. But where I get hung up is like what happened in 2016 then, because Hillary thought she had that in the bag. Like she thought she was this election. It's all signs point to that she was this election. So how was that allowed to happen? Did they not have the cheating down right? Like, I mean, explain that to me, because I get everything else, I feel like, but like 2016, so like how did that happen?
There's no transparency in our elections whatsoever. So at any time they can flip it. I don't believe there was ever an accident.
It's going to be a reverse this time.
They slipped on this and he accidentally got through. I believe at any time they can, the mechanisms to allow for cheating. Because back in 2016, they still had absentee ballots and mail-in ballots, and they still had times. And those same counties that took that time to say we have to count every single ballot, we got to make sure people who don't have the opportunity to vote, Christy, they got to have the opportunity to vote. So we got to wait a week after for the mail to come in. And as long as it was post-dated, those same states had that. They've been trying to move us to mail-in ballots across the board for quite some time. The COVID presented that opportunity. So I do believe that everything, this is my conspiracy theory hat, right? That I do believe that everything we're seeing is meant to be. And one thing was just meant to usher in another thing, meaning one person was meant to usher in another person. And at the end of the day, it's still those same people who've been controlling things for how long, Steve?
Well, it's all about inversion. Okay. And the independent media used to agree to a person that, okay, well, if you wanted to get the really, really shitty legislation passed that you could never get passed under a Republican president, you let the Democrat president do it. And then if you wanted to get the really, really, really shitty gun legislation or whatever, you made sure the Republican president did it. And that's just how the inversion has worked the entire way. Joe Biden wrote the omnibus counterterrorism bill in 1995, and they couldn't get it passed under a Democrat. It took Project for a New American Centuries, nice little document, and then it took a major event on September 11th, a deep structural event on September 11th, and then all of a sudden that omnibus counterterrorism bill comes back as the Patriot Act, and it gets passed without a single solitary person reading it under George W. Bush. And again, there was a point when the independent media all agreed that this is how the inversion worked. But now all of a sudden, because it's happening again, it's not that way. And so that's wild to me.
So hold on, Steve, let me give a contrarian viewpoint to all this, because I don't think that I think they wanted Hillary Clinton. I'm going to take that position. But I'm going to go okay. It's not like this is news to anybody.
You don't get the response to lockdowns and mandates and stuff like that. You don't get Poppy Warp Speed without Trump in office. There would have been legitimate resistance against Hillary Clinton. There would have been legitimate pushback against Steve Mnuchin's Treasury printing trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars.
I don't necessarily disagree. I think there'd been a lot of pushback out of the gates of transfer from Obama to Hillary. I think there would have been a short sell from the racial into the gender, the first woman president, and those identity politics plays because of the policy. But again, I legitimately think they did try to rig it against Trump. And let me give you my historical viewpoint on this whole thing. So 2006, even HBO was doing documentaries like Hacking Democracy. Bev Harris was out there. You talked about the fractional voting. One of the softwares they saw in there was called GEM. And you could see
2020,
how
they did kill chain.
Yeah, you could see
see-
how
yeah,
it was done.
2020.
And one of the things, and even Greg Palast, who was on this show, who I commended for his work on that, and then he was telling me Boogaloo Boys were going to steal it in 2020. Just wild stuff. Was out there with Bev going and getting the paper receipts, going through garbage. You know what I mean? Putting out the evidence. So we've now shifted from those people, you know, at least having some legitimacy in the media and the questions being asked, to no longer even be able to forget about asking it and then being demonized by a group. But who is it? Tina Peters, serving 9 years in prison right now for doing her job as an auditor and just taking a digital image of what the results were before they may have altered it in the software, saying she was trying to change votes. That's a big problem because we're not just talking about the macro of whether or not the president got in through cheating or not. You get down to a level where that's your auditor, your state senator, your county assemblyman, and there is no choice. That's where we're in, and you're prosecuting people that it's their literal job. You know, what I think happened with Trump is I think they had an algorithm for a certain amount that they could get within the exit polls. Because actually people talked about exit polls. And by the way, that software has changed in a lot of places this year. They want digital signatures now on that instead of an actual thing. So people think the exit polls are safe this time around. They're not. I think there's a lot of cheating going on. But I think you look at Georgia, for instance. Right now they're making a big stink about Jill Stein. Well, they were talking about votes in Georgia, and they were going to be able to find it for Hillary Clinton, and they started recounting them, and they were finding them for Donald Trump, and they stopped that real quick. Anybody can go look into that. So to me, I think this is it. Like now we've come at it from 3 different angles because the machines were already a problem, and I think they were able to rig a certain amount of national important elections for a long time. I think that Trump was just too big to rig, and I hope that, again, this is my hopium, back to Charlie, because I don't think he's wrong, that it can be too big to rig again. I mean, MSG, baby, like it or not, home of the Knicks. Like, they may have sucked the last God knows how long, but I heard they had a pretty good season this year, and I haven't watched them in 20 months. Yeah,
had a whole media, tour. They're going to use the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. They're not going to certify Trump. They've already said this. And now if you look at what the DOD, the change in the DOD, right, and their rules of engagement, the change, then you look at the democracy defense. You know what that is?
No, but I did watch. Did you watch War Game?
Democracy defense. Go look at what that is, and then put that with what the DOD just did. Because I was thinking they don't need the immigrants after Tuesday, right? So I mean, even the Democrats, I mean, they'll mass deport them. They don't need them after Tuesday. Get them out of here. Who cares?
So,
right? And if they do that, Americans are going to stand up to that, right? There's going to be Americans that are going to stand up to that. So the military can be used.
Let me just say this. They've already war gamed something like this on January 6, 2023, and they actually made a documentary film. And Charlie, to your point of trying to degrade the American people, you know who some of the starring players in this bad boy are? Peter Strzok plays one of the major characters that everything's going down in. They brought in Vindman, okay? It's with Vet's voice. And let me tell you how it kicks off. This time around, this January 6th thing, people are violent. They're being directed by Roger Stone and Steve Bannon-like characters, one played by William Crystal. And they're actually it gets better, Steve. It gets better. So they have actually planted a bunch of devices and are going to cause violence. Go watch the documentary. I played clips of it the other day on the 4th Hour at Jones Show because it was just too unbelievable. The best part is, now everybody knows that the regular January 6th, probably even with all the provocateurs, couldn't have happened had they put National Guard there like Trump had asked. It would have been very difficult unless you had provocateurs within the National Guard or military apparatus to actually make that happen. So this time around for the war game, large sects of the National Guard side with this group and cause violence and turn on everybody. So that's how you take them out of the mix. And meanwhile,
Jason,
while they're
that's
saying
why I
this,
think
go
they
ahead.
still need the illegals because maybe my confidence is misplaced, but I still think that the military is loyal with the populace because they came from the populace.
Well, I think it's absurd too. I mean,
that's
that's my point. I don't think that, listen, there's no way large sects of the National Guard, people that joined up, hopefully, to do, a couple months a year and weekends, are going to turn on the actual military that's been making fun of them on the inside most of the time, just so everybody knows that happens. People in the Army make fun of the National Guard, Marines make fun of the Army, everybody makes fun of the Navy, etc. That's how it works. Like, it's just absurd. But again, this is a Christian group. They've given it a name. I, like Steve, do not believe under any circumstance this nation is gearing up for a civil war. I think that's Johnny nonsense. What I think will happen is there will be contrived and sometimes pushed movements of small pockets of violence that will be portrayed as some kind of a national emergency. And look, we are in the era of deepfakes, everybody. I don't know if everybody caught the Door Brothers' latest video. What is it? Lies Wide Awake or something like that. I mean, it ain't perfect, but if that's what a couple of dudes on their supercomputers are doing, can you imagine what the government's going to be able to put out there alongside real footage in the next year and a half, especially if they want to play off all this civil war Johnny nonsense? Look, man, again, that's why I started it saying, hope we get here, no guarantees there. We'll see what starts on the other side if we get there. Because look, again, the Middle East, Lebanon, come on. Like, we all saw it coming. But, like, how far do you get to go into Lebanon without Russia and Iran actually coming back with something crazy? Yeah, I mean, we've now pushed into a new era of warfare where somehow we've normalized the idea we can just blow people up in general populous areas randomly. With their
if that's the case, Jay, then why is
time.
Trump running around saying, I'm going to give Israel a blank check?
I get it. It's bad news brown. Like I said, I'm not with, listen, you're preaching to the choir. I don't like it. I don't like any of it.
Well, I mean, doesn't that, though, it like kind of seal the deal on the friends teaming up?
Yeah, but at the same time, you know damn well, Steve, before October 7th, U.S. Special Forces are there. That they send more U.S. Special Forces. This idea that we're not arming Israel the whole time is a bunch of just crap.
No, I would never suggest.
That's what I'm saying is like, what's the alternative? I think at the end of the day, Trump doesn't like looking at dead kids. Maybe not as much as I don't. And he'll say, okay, what's the plan? And I said it from the very beginning. All solutions are bad. Like, we've got, like, here's the deal. I'll give you this example. Does everybody here know who Michael Rivero of WhatReallyHappened.com is?
Yeah.
Okay. So I've known Michael for many, many years. He's in my film Fabled Enemies in the Israeli section. Now, in a lot of cases, I would say that he overemphasized some of the influence of Israel. That was his main thing on all of it, right? I had him on my TNT show before TNT went under. God bless. Rest in peace, TNT. Hopefully you will come out of the ashes one day. And he was full on MAGA. And I'm like, what is guy caught me by surprise? And I said, I had to bring it up. And I brought up, well, what's going on in the Middle East? And he goes, look, I'm going to be very pragmatic. He goes, at least Trump gets the economy going again and knocks some things. He goes, Israel's going to do what Israel's going to do. Hearing that out of Mike Rivero's mouth was just like, it was weirdly sobering for a second. And I thought to myself, now, is that a reality? I mean, at some levels, it kind of is. Les Wexner's still riding that pony, even though they're picking up Abercrombie and Fitch dude, who's also connected to him. Dershowitz is a hero in a lot of these circles, right? And he's like the Epstein lawyer. Like, we're in, and like was said earlier, Trump called Pompeo a good guy several times on the Joe Rogan podcast. I mean, is it beyond blind spots, Steve? You bet your ass it is. But I'd like to believe this. Here's my fantasy land. You want to hear it? My fantasy land is the guy gets in January And by May, we'll give it 5 months. Whatever terrible solution it is, total regions of the Middle East aren't being devastated, and I don't have to watch dead kids everywhere. Now, in those 5 months, you may also see Jared Kushkush putting beachfront property on Gaza. Totally disgusting. I totally get it. I'm with you 1,000%. But if that means stopping me watching dead kids, like, those kids don't get a choice, right? I mean, at best, again, pragmatically, I don't see, if there was another solution that I thought, hey, we could get it done quicker and less people would die, sure, I'm in 1,000 times, but I don't know there is one. And again, maybe that's my hopium. I'll let someone else speak.
I think Burgess Meredith is the one who quoted the phrase, I think, Jason Bermas, you can crap in one hand and wish in the other and see which one gets filled first. Because I don't think that's a fantasy that's going to come true. And if Trump really didn't care about seeing dead kids or babies out there, somebody should have warned him about, increasing the drone warfare by like 300%. Actually led to more dead kids and children. But I mean,
Yemen is another huge criticism.
Very conscious.
You're right.
I think we should be thinking at the end of the day, it doesn't really make a difference who's going to be the president. They're going to give us who they want, and we should be concerned on what's to come. And I think nobody better than people in this group of people here on the Union of the Unwanted would be the first to say that, hey, listen, we were able, the oligarch was able to get a lot of dumb Democrats on the grid because of COVID, you know what I'm saying? Well, how do they get the Republicans on the grid? Oh, here it is. And it goes right back into the election thing. The fear of illegal immigrants, right? Legal immigrants are voting. How do we stop that? Let's just listen to Catherine Austin Fitts. You ain't got to listen to me. Let's get you on digital IDs. And who better than Peter Thiel sitting right there to do so? Also, we're not even talking about Lebanon, baby. We're talking about Iran. We're already moved on to something serious right now. So if you want to question how does Russia and China not get involved, I think we're already past that, my friend.
Yeah, but also, at this point, don't we have to start, now that our eyes are open, at least everyone here and all of our audiences, can we start like just marginalizing them? Like, why do I care? Like, I just feel like the power here is going to be in the people organizing against a lot of this stuff, the digital IDs. I'm a Trump person, but I mean, when I heard the Pompeo thing and I heard him saying, the digital IDs at the border and all this BS, I mean, I don't like any of this. I'm with Charlie. I don't want to live in the life that they're creating for us. I don't want my children. I don't want my grandchildren. I don't want people that aren't even born in the next 20 years to ever live in the world of Agenda 2030 track and trace surveillance, because I'm frankly convinced that the parent company built the model that's working in communist China right now for the whole world. So, I mean, I feel like we're dealing with much different, bigger things than who's the president. We're dealing with what do we want for our country and what are we willing to do for it peacefully and organized. I mean, Pasta, we've been around the country, me and Jason, it's like people are out there. They want to get involved and do something, but then doing it is a whole different thing. And I just feel like people have to take personal responsibility for allowing our country to get so effed up that we have no rights, no privacy. We got a world military at this point, as far as it looks like to me. Our borders are wide open, but nobody's asking why they're coming here in the first place. Nobody's tearing into USAID. Nobody's tearing into National Endowment for Democracy. I mean, we've had a cover-up operation in the CIA and FBI since 1963, where the worst people get promoted higher in the intelligence blob. But the worst thing that's going on in this country, to me, is that we're not really free. And other than our license, our birth certificate, and our social security card, I don't think the government's entitled to anyone's data. I don't think big tech is entitled to anyone's shit. And I think it should be up to the people. But it's us allowing it. I just want to know, like, at what point do we realize that everyone's owned? They have their own blob of unconstitutional Patriot Act spawned agencies that have no oversight and were weaponized against us. Then on the other side, they have all the lawfare people from the Clinton and Obama DOJ that work with Brookings and everyone to make sure that they're taking away as many rights and liberty and everything as they can from us and everywhere around the world. So we have a government that is so destructive and we keep thinking we can fix it. And I don't think it, I think we have to not fix it. Let it burn itself down. Let them all come out with their pedophile and their blackmail and all that. But I think we have to organize like Union of the Unwanted and not give up. And look at open the big tent. I don't know. I don't care what people thought about what happened at MSG, but having lived there for 20 years, to see that there were proud people going to see Trump in the middle of New York City is something I never thought I'd see. Like, during COVID, if you said that you like Trump, I mean, there was a good chance you would probably be like kicked out of everywhere and people yelling in your face. So it is nice just to see different people with different opinions speaking on the same stage. That's why I've been saying the whole time that Union of the Unwanted was my favorite show, because I have a chance to talk to everyone and I respect everyone equally. And I think in this country, if we start having community meetings and investing in our neighborhoods and our local area and our friends and our family, and just, just defund the United Nations, all of its tentacles, and let's just figure out how to save this country so that we can help the rest of the world clean up our own house and pull it back to 800. I mean, there's so much we can do, but if we don't demand it in mass, none of it's going to happen. They need to be scared of us. Like I think it's Madison that said that quote, when the government fears the people, it's liberty. When the people fear the government, it's tyranny. Well, we have a choice right now, and I do think they fear us getting together and uniting over what does matter, which isn't 3 issues every cycle.